half of the show now. Okay, This Gun for Hire. Wow, that is a very influential movie. As I'm sure some of you know, Veronica Lake with The Fall, the hairstyle, was a threat to American women during World War II because they were wearing their hair like that when they were going into the shipyards and things. And that's when they all were ordered to wear the snoods to cover their hair so that they weren't getting entangled in the machinery. Alan Ladd, of course, that's the first real sexy stone cold killer part in an American film. Obviously, he has to die at the end because everything about him is in total defiance of the Hollywood production code. And of course, Tully Marshall, who's the villain at the end in the wheelchair, is obviously the model for Mr. Burns on The Simpsons. I'm absolutely positive of that. Again, no evidence, but as we know, you don't need to back anything up with facts these days. You just say it from the stage. So, he is the model for Mr. Burns. Okay. All right, now the next film that you're about to see, this is a real rarity, and I am so thrilled that our colleagues at Universal Pictures had an archival print of this movie that they are allowing us to screen. If you were here last night, you heard me bemoan the fact that several studios are now pulling back their 35mm prints if it's the only one that they have, and they're not allowing them to be screened anymore. This is a sad day, really, for me. But Universal, they're good guys. And this year, in fact, Universal struck 5 new 35mm prints of very rare and obscure movies that at some point I'm sure will make it up here to Seattle in another noir festival. But they are tremendous. And they have kept good care of Dr. Broadway, and they understand that why do movies exist, right? Are they to be stuck in a museum somewhere not to be seen, or are they supposed to be screened so that people can actually see them? And regardless of who the caretaker of these films are, I come down on the side of the people who actually created these things, and I'm sure that it would give them no end of joy to know that there's an audience assembled here today to watch Dr. Broadway, made in 1942, the first feature film directed by the great Anthony Mann. So some of the background of this film, back before television, movie studios and their B units very often would create serials. So if you go see The Falcon, or you go see The Saint, or Mr. Moto, or any of these things, it was like the TV series of the day. And so they would crank these things out on a relatively low budget, and audiences would, oh, there's another Mr. Moto playing. Well, the idea behind Dr. Broadway was that we're going to create, we're going to create a series of films about this Broadway general practitioner who hobnobs with gangsters and all the riffraff and the stars on Broadway. And it was such a good idea that it lasted one movie. That may have something to do with the fact that the star, MacDonald Carey, doesn't even move the charm meter. Right? But I can say that because the guy had a long career in show business, and if anybody was ever laid up and watched daytime TV, you know that Days of Our Lives, MacDonald Carey, 30 years on Days of Our Lives as the central character, so he wasn't hurting for a successful career. But on the movie end of things, he was totally a B actor, and the only time he appeared in an A film was playing a second lead or something, most famously in Alfred Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt, where he was the very, very boring police inspector on the trail of a very dashing and sexy Joseph Cotten. That's the way it works in film noir, right? Okay, so Emil Anton Bunzman, despite that very foreign-sounding name, was born in San Diego, California, and he was an assistant director. He'd been around theater all of his life, made the transition into films, worked as an assistant director on a lot of things, and then got his first crack in the B unit at Paramount And this is his first effort as a director. He spent about 3 or 4 years in the B trenches and then started making feature films independently for some of the Poverty Row companies. A great producer named Edward Small hired him to direct pictures for his Reliance Pictures Corporation. Then he went to work for Eagle Lion. Then he, of course, graduated up to MGM. And during all of that, he was making some of the best film noir made in Hollywood in the 1940s. Pictures like Raw Deal, T-Men, Border Incident, Railroaded, absolutely fantastic movies. And he made Side Street when he went to MGM, and then really made his name in film history in the 1950s when he made a series of what we now call noir westerns, most of these starring Jimmy Stewart, and many of which were written by the man who wrote the original story of Dr. Broadway, a man named Borton Chase, who was a very interesting story in his own right. Borton Chase, whose real name was Frank Fowler, this is what I love about talking about these movies, is because today, I hate to say it, but today, when you talk about a filmmaker, when SIFF brings a filmmaker here who's 25 years old, and they say, tell us about your background, and they say, well, I started film school when I was like 12 years old, and I've been thinking about making films all this time, okay? Then you show these films, and it's like, well, Frank Fowler was actually a driver for a gangster named Frankie Yale, who was killed by Al Capone, and he also helped dig the Holland Tunnel in New York when he was a teenager. And he got his name when he came to Hollywood after writing a book called Sandhog about the adventures of digging the Holland Tunnel. He took his name from, yes, Borton Milk, and the Chase Manhattan Bank. Miraculously became Borton Chase when he got to Hollywood. There is a cocktail named after him, the Borton Chase, Scotch sweet vermouth, Pernod, and orange bitters. I think I'm going to have one today. And then he ended up writing Red River for Howard Hawks, and Bend of the River, and The Far Country, and all these pictures for Anthony Mann in the 1940s. And before you love him too much, he was a big anti-communist crusader who really went after people in Hollywood. I'm always talking about the guys who were blacklisted and never talking about the guys who put them on the blacklist. Well, Borton Chase was one of those guys, but quite an excellent writer and a very, very colorful figure in Hollywood history. And he shares the screen credit here with Art Arthur, who, lo and behold, was an actual Broadway columnist in New York. So a lot of the very Runyon-esque stuff that you're going to see in this screenplay is thanks to Art Arthur. The film's photographed by the great Theodore Sparkle, who is one of the lesser-known German emigres who came and made his mark in Hollywood. He made a lot of B films at Paramount that are really, really terrific, and is not better known because he died at 50 years of age, not long, just about 4 or 5 years after this film was made. But his work, as you'll see right from the opening scene, is absolutely exceptional. If the woman in the opening scene looks very much like Ginger Rogers, that's because Jean Carter was Ginger Rogers' stand-in. And that was basically how she made her way in Hollywood. She never really had much of a career, but she was subbing for Ginger Rogers in virtually every movie that she made. This movie is just jam-packed with character actors, and all of you who love these movies are going to be hitting each other, saying, who's this guy? I know I've seen this guy. Who's this person again? And I'm not going to stand there and recite them all. That's what Google is for. So I hope you enjoy this. It is, again, a lot of the B movies we're showing this week are exemplary examples of what a B film was, where the idea was keep them really entertained. And so they're not one note. There's a lot of suspense in this film. There's crime, there's violence, there's comedy, just outrageous stuff. This is the way they used to do it in 1942. And I'm glad we have the opportunity to show this extremely rare film today. So I hope you enjoy it. Dr. Broadway.